So today's topic, today we are covering the exam timetable generator. This is the tool that will automatically create your exam timetable while minimizing clashes and balancing student load across the exam period. As you are no doubt aware, unless you're brand new to this, this can be found in the hub, and the hub is basically just app.schooldata.com.au/hub. By the end of today, we hope you'll know how to set up an exam project, configure constraints, run the solver and review results, and use the supporting tools. I want to push through this presentation as quickly as I can because I want to make sure I leave time for these supporting tools. I think they're underutilized. Just looking at one of them, that create exam TFX, if you get a student file at the end of your exam generation, and you have to go through that tedious task of getting it synced with your TFX, you can pretty much do it in a couple of clicks using that Create Exam TFX helper app. This is really important. Before you begin, there are two data checks that you need to do first. If you skip these, the solver might group students incorrectly, or it might miss enrollments entirely. Check number one is student timetables. And in a second, I'll bring this on the screen and show you. You need to go into your TFX and just have a look that your timetable looks complete. If you're using your real live timetable file, you probably don't need to do this because someone would have told you by now, 26th of Feb, if your students are missing classes on their timetables. So that one should be fine. Check two though, the subject codes and the suffixes. You need to make sure these are correct in menu 7D, and I will show you this in just a second. This is one that often catches people out. If two classes of the same subject have different subject codes, so you might have 11 ENG01 and 11 ENG02, if they are set as your subject codes, not your class codes, then the solver will treat them as two different subjects. So I'm just going to pause just for a second to show you what I'm talking about here. I'm hoping that you can see my timetable module now. So in here, if we go to menu 7 and then we go in the right-hand task tree to 7D class names, essentially you can see here that my subject codes are real subject codes and the suffixes are appended to the end. If we skip down here a little bit, you'll see soon that there's a mistake. This bio class here. So we've got 10 bio 01 and 10 bio 02 set as the subject code, and the suffix field over here is blank for both of these entries. Now what this will do, if we quickly jump over into the hub and we go to the exam timetable generator, if we go into a file where this has been linked and we go to subject selection and we type 10 bio into the filter here, you'll see that the exam app thinks that 10 bio 01, exam 1, and 10 bio 02, exam 1, are two different subjects. Now this means that it could put them on at different times, or you'll have to group them together. You'll have to put a join constraint, which is annoying if you think about how often you would have to do that. It should look something like this, where if we have a look at Year 10 English, exam 1, all classes are bundled in there. Okay, so that's menu 7D, and it is a really, really important one. As I said earlier, there are 4 tools here that we're going to have a look at. Number 1 is the exam timetable generator. Number 2 is the marking load app. Number 3 is the enrichment helper. It basically produces something that you're like a nice, pretty timetable, if you like, that your admin team might need to do otherwise. And finally, as I said earlier, an exam TFX, which will take your solution, and it's something you can directly import into your timetabling software and sync it with your learning management system and SIS as well. All right, so the initial exam setup, as I said before, I'll run through the slides first and then we'll come back to a quick demo. Head to the hub, click New Project, upload your current academic TFX file. It's non-destructive, and what that means is when you upload your TFX file to the exam solver, it doesn't do anything to your TFX file. You can upload your live one that's actually operating. It just basically extracts the information out of it and leaves your original untouched. If you're nervous about that at all, create a copy of your TFX and SFX files, place them in another folder and run with that, load that TFX in, but there is really no need. Tell the solver which year levels will be doing exams. A little bit of a gotcha here, just in this version. This question is asking you which students are doing exams. And so if you have a year 11 exam period, but year 10s are enrolled in those subjects, you'll need to make sure you tick year 10 as well. And I'll step you through that when we get up to it. Gap, max per day, a series of constraints that you can add in here, which I'll show you in just a second. Then tick your subjects that require exams. From there, we have some optimization options. And these optimization options are basically things like, do you want to run the bigger exams earlier? Do you earlier in, sorry, is anyone getting feedback? Yeah, thank you. Do you want to run those exams earlier in the exam period? That's one option. And another option is, do you want to run big exams earlier in the day? That is another kind of forward loading mechanism that you've got. Just a suggestion, I would always run without those optimization options ticked first. And if you get a really good result, you might want to run it again with those ticked. The reason I say this is you just want to make sure that you can get a really good exam timetable first, and then you might want to see if you can improve it afterwards. It's a bit like when you're making a timetable, you want to get a timetable that works first before you start to try to make the best timetable you've ever had. Okay. So the constraint types that we've got that we're going to cover, once again, I'll fly through them because we'll talk about them in more detail in a second. Joins force multiple exams to run at the same time. Day constraints over here sets the number of days between particular exams. Tag lists, you can group students like you might have a vet list who won't be on site on Wednesday afternoon, and you can ask the solver to not schedule those students on the Wednesday afternoon. On-off constraints is all the usual stuff. Year 11s can't do an exam, day 1, session 3. Year 10s must have their English exam, day 2, session 1, all of that kind of stuff. Maximum exams, so you might only have one language venue, so you'll want to put a maximum of one language exam on at any given point in time. Back-to-back exams is pretty cool. If you've got a list of students who require extra time, you can upload that list and the solver will do everything it can to ensure those students don't get back-to-back exams. And solution lock. If you run this once and you really like 80 or 90% of the exam timetable, but you want to play around with trying to fix the other 10 to 20%, then you can re-import a solution and lock it and maybe unlock 10 or 20% of it. Solve and review, all the standard stuff you would expect. It will tell you whether it's feasible. It will give you all the exam slots and your exam timetable, and it will give you an analysis of the degree to which it could satisfy the constraints.
According to I'm just going to make sure my microphone.
Okay, let's dive in. One final point before we dive in and have a look. Run it as many times as you like. We get feedback that some people will run this 10 or 15 times just with 1 or 2 constraints tweaked. That's exactly the reason for this type of app existing. It shouldn't, if your solution is optimizable, you know, you can get an optimal solution. Sometimes it'll take 5 or 6 seconds. If it's really, really complex and it's really difficult, it can take up to 5 minutes, but we're not, you know, you'll never be in a scenario where it takes 20 or 30 minutes to get a solution. Okay, so let's jump in and have a look. As we said, you go to the hub and the app you want is the exam timetable generator. Later on, we're going to have a look at these 3 as well. Click the exam timetable generator, simply press new project over here on the right, give it a name. I always like to call mine test, just so that if I'm sharing my screen with the school, you never have the school name appearing on the screen here. So we'll just call it SEM1 test exam timetable. and I'll spell it correctly, and continue. In the next screen, and it's a guided walkthrough, it asks you to upload your TFX file. And so mine is up here in exam files for School Data College. Press OK and submit, and it will extract all of the information out of these exam files that it needs. This can take up to about 10 seconds. If you get an error here at this stage here, it might be, it's probably one reason and one reason only. In your TFX settings, and I can show you this really quickly, back in the parameters, you need values in anything under default values. So you need minutes per period and you need a number of academic periods per cycle. So it's as simple as just ensuring you've got numbers in those fields to make sure that you don't get an error when loading your file. Okay, quick run through here. Let's say you have a year 9, 10 and 11 exam period coming up. Let's say this is a kind of a frequently asked question, if you like. Let's say you have the year 9 exam period starting later than the year 10 and 11 exam period, and maybe the year 11 exam period ends earlier than and the year 9s are still going. I would still urge you to run them all in one go, and I'll show you how you can kind of control this to get one long exam timetable. Let's say the year 11s and 10s have 6 days, the year 9s have a day 7 and 8, but their total exam period is only, say, 4 days. The total exam period is 8 days in that scenario. So you can set this to 8. You can, I would suggest having the maximum exam periods, maximum exams per day set to 2. That is, the students can only do 2 exams in one day, but there are 3 sessions per day. Now, just a bit of advice, things that I've noticed. If you have an exam venue that's not available on day 2, session 3, for example, and it seats 100 students, you can change this to 215, or you can kind of, if you have entire sessions where exams can't be run, I would suggest just blocking those out from all year levels in subsequent screens. So if you have 1 or 2 venues that aren't available, it's probably the best place to do it down here. But if you've got entire sessions where you can't have exams, say no one can have an exam, or maybe a certain year level can't have an exam, there are better places to handle that. And I'll show you that in just a second. I mentioned before, allocate exams to early days and allocate exams to early sessions. I wouldn't tick them in the first run, but if you get a really good result, come back, rerun it with one of these ticked. Okay, I'll move on. And now here's the bit where I'll slow down a little bit just in case there are any questions as we go. Sorry, every time I move the screen over here, it tends to throw everything out of the way. Okay. All right, so I'm going to press next and go to subject selection on the next screen. Now here, let's say anything that has year 11 in it, or most things that have year 11 in it will have an exam. I'm going to tick them all, but then I'm going to untick the things that don't. So, you know, vets and vocational things and homerooms and sports won't. Sport and rec will in this one, but the vocational ones won't. As I scroll down, you'll start to see that now we've got the VCE subjects here, and they all look pretty good. And so I'm going to leave those in there. Year 11 religion, semester 1 might not, but I'll leave it in. Year 10, I will change the filter. I'll tick them all, and I'll remove a handful of things. Oh, this has still got the bio with 2 exams because I didn't change that code. I'll show you how you can join those. If you have 1 or 2 of these, it's not the end of the world. I'll show you how you can join those in just a second. Maybe remind me if I don't. I'll remove things like representative football. I'll remove personal development. I could type these into the filter, but it's just as quick to do it this way. And that might do. And let's just say the year 9s are only going to have, for the sake of our time today, they're going to have English, maths, numeracy, science, and maybe humanities. Let's go geography and history. Okay, Now let's press second exams. In here, you will only see a list of the subjects you ticked. You can't have a second exam for Year 9 Tech if it didn't have a first exam in the previous screen. So let's say some Year 11 maths subjects. So I'm just going to type MATH in there. Let's say specialist and methods have a second exam. And we press next and go to third exams. Let's say it's an IB school and specialist, even though this isn't an IB subject. Let's say specialist has a third exam. We, once again, you can only see subjects that had 2 exams in the third exam screen for obvious reasons. Now, join constraints. I mentioned before, join constraints are things that must run at the same time. A lot of people will say, oh yeah, English and literature, we want them to run at the same time. Bear in mind, if you tick English and literature in here, and any student does English and literature, then they will come up as a clash because you force these 2 exams into the same slot. So my suggestion would be not to do that unless you absolutely have to. One case where we absolutely have to is due to a mistake where we have these 2 Year 10 bio as 2 different subjects. So I'm going to tick them both, press add join constraint, and it throws it down the bottom here. So you can see that they must be scheduled at the same time. I think we had Year 9 history and geography as 2 separate exams here. If they are rotations that half the students do them in Sem 1 and half do them in Sem 2, you might want to join them as well. There aren't many that you're going to want to join though. Next, we'll go to day constraints. Day constraints, and the clue is down here, minimum days between exams. So if you have certain exams that must be on different days, this is where you would set that. The prime example here is, say, specialist maths exams 1, 2, and 3. You can't have any of them on the same day as each other unless you want that. So I'm going to put minimum days between 0. 0 means they can't be on the same day as each other, but they can be on adjacent days. And so I press add day constraint. And again, there's a clue in the wording. These 3 exams must be scheduled on different days. And the other one would be methods. Year 11 methods, days between. If you want them to have a full day gap between them, you can type in 1. If you want them to be at opposite ends of the exam timetable, you could put in 2 or 3 in here or more. I'll add that constraint and I'll move to tag lists. I'll try to remind myself to pause for at least 5 seconds at the end of each screen, just in case there are any questions that are kind of percolating at the moment. If not, I will also just check my emails as well to make sure that none are coming through. No, we're okay. They're unrelated. Okay, tag lists. Tag lists are really, I think, cool. That might not be quite the word that most people would use, but I think they are very, very, very handy. Tag lists basically say, hey, we've got this group of students who are going to perhaps be off-site at a certain time, and so we don't want them to get an exam on this particular day or session. Some really common examples would be our vet students aren't on site on Wednesday afternoon. Maybe our soccer team have made the final, or we think that they're a chance to make the final, so we are going to try to keep the soccer team off day 2, session 2 and 3. Or in semester 2, maybe you have a list of all of your students who are doing a year 12 subject. So you might create a tag list. It's not as relevant here, but you might create a tag list called year 12 bio. Just trying to choose a subject that I think we will find some students in. This field to filter by is looking in the student records inside your timetable file. If you scroll to the bottom and choose student lessons, and then you say BI033, you can see there are 2 year 12 bio classes down here. If I tick them both and I create the tag list, down here what it said is there are 27 students, and I've anonymized this file, I hope I have. I've anonymized it. So these are the 27 students who do year 12 bio, and you'll see that about half of them, or no, just under half, are actually year 11 students. Of those year 11 students, they have 18 exams in this exam period. And so what we can do is we can tell the solver when the year 12 bio exam is going to run, and we can block off these students from having exams. Now, if it's infeasible to keep 18 exams off a whole day, then it will at least get you the best possible result. But just bear in mind, it may not get down to 0 out of those 18 exams on any given day. Okay, on-off constraints, and I'll pause, I'll try to go slowly here in case there are any questions so far. On-off constraints here are your standard constraints. And so a really common one would be year 11 English. We want that to be day 1, session 1, and it says must have, so on up the top, and it's at the subject level. I press add on off and you scroll down and you can see it down here. You might then say, oh, we don't want our year 11s to do anything else on day 1. And so we change subject to year level and we change on to off, and we say session 2 and session 3, I haven't picked year level, our year 11s, add on off, and basically all of those year 11 students won't have an exam there. The other one might be a tag list. We say cannot have, now we have to pick our tag list, year 12 bio. Our year 12 bio tag list of 18 students cannot have an exam on day 5, for example. Now I know that, so I'll press add on off. This is going to be a relatively challenging timetable for the solver now, because there are, I think, a stack, I can't remember, was it 18 or 27? Might have been 27 exams, no, 18 exams that can't happen on day 5 now. I mentioned before also that your year 11s end after 6 days of exams. And so if we say year level 11 cannot have exams on day 7 or 8, we add that and we say year level 9 cannot have exams. Let's just say the first 3 days, so I'm not clicking for ages. And that is added down here as well. Okay, let's go to max exams. Maximum exams is where you set daily or session-based limits. And the 2 examples I like to fall back to all the time, a really good day-based, 1 per day, might be, I don't like it when students have a methods and a spec exam on the same day. And so if I go maths and I choose 11 spec, 11 methods, that's exam 1, scroll down, spec exam 2, methods exam 2, spec exam 3. And I say max 1 per day, and this applies to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now there's going to be a problem here because you can't have anything other than English and Lit there. There were 27 exams, 18 exams that can't go on day 5, and they only have a 6-day exam timetable, yet there are 5 exams that need a separate day from each other. So maybe I'll say, just to make this work, I might say day 3 doesn't apply to this rule, and I'll add this max exam constraint. The other one, it says down here, days 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. Let's say you've only got 1 language venue, 1 per session of, and in this school, let's go year 11 Italian, year 10 Italian, and maybe French, year 11 and 10 French. And we'll go a 1 per session here. There is a shortcut here. You could set this to per day so that it clicks 3 at a time, and then change it to per session afterwards. I don't need day 7 and 8 because they don't have exams anyway, or maybe the 10s do, sorry. And this will now be a 1 per session max for all of those language exams. And you can see that down the bottom here. I think that'll do for max exams. Back to back, I don't have a CSV on handy, but if you have a list of students in a CSV who can't do back-to-back exams because they get extra time, here's where you import it. Next, I'm just wondering that whether there is I thought we might have a template in here. I'll sort that out. Next, we have solution lock. In solution lock, as I said before, at the end of this solve, you will get a solution CSV. That solution CSV is the one that you import back here if you want to lock part of it. Okay. So I don't have one of those on hand, so I'm going to go to Launch Solver and press Solve now. What will happen here is this will give us a message in just a few seconds saying the solve is initiated. When I press the X, it'll kick me back to the home screen. One thing, we have a new notification, probably just to say it's solving. One thing at the moment in this version, you will have to refresh the page to get updates about how it's going. So it says now that it's running, this one up here. And I think this one might take a minute or two because of those constraints that I put in. But I'm very, very impatient. And so I will keep pressing that until it says ready. But this is probably a good opportunity to ask whether there are any questions so far. Otherwise, I will keep pressing refresh until it solves. If it goes for much longer, I might go into one of these solved ones and show you what it looks like, and then come back and have a look at this one once it's solved. Give it 10 more seconds. I'll take the note out of next week's webinar about these being interactive sessions. No, not yet. All right, let's dive in to one that has one we've prepared earlier. When you click in the row, you'll see the tick box over on the left to say it's active, and you get these options over here, obviously bin and refresh, but you've got view project here, and you also have clone project. So if you've got a project where you like 90% of the constraints you put in, but you want to tweak them, you can simply clone them and then dive in and edit the constraints and rerun. If I go, I'll just try one more. It can take up to 5 minutes, as I said, if it's a complex one. So that's my fault for making it complex. Let's view the project down here. And what you will get down here is you will get a validate solution message, and it tells you that this solution has been generated with no clashes, optimal solution found. You can go to the solution summary. In here, it's not the most readable format at the moment, I suppose, because there are other screens where it'll be really readable, but you can get a bit of a preview. So if you're just keeping an eye on one or two constraints, you can check them out in here. You can see where subjects have landed. You can see the constraints you set, and you can see if there are any student clashes, which there weren't in this one. You can analyze your constraints. This one I ran earlier only had seven constraints, and it says that all 7 of them were met over here. It also tells you whether any of them were bypassable. And that's the constraint type is where that configuration lives. Next, generate timetables. Again, this is a handy way to check if you want to dive in. You can generate the master timetable, which looks like this. And you can see where exams have landed. You can generate year level based timetables here. So if you just want to see the year 11 timetable, you can see that here. I've got a new notification. I'm hoping that if I go back, that'll tell me it's solved, but we'll come back to that in a sec. And the last menu is export student file. This generates the SFX for you instantly, and you'll all be used to what those SFXs look like. All right, our solution is finished cooking, and so we can go into number 31, have a quick look. I reckon it'll say feasible, there's my guess. Yeah, 2 student clashes is the best possible outcome here based on the constraints we loaded. If you can get an optimal solution, it will probably take 5 or 6 seconds, or sometimes up to 20 or 30 seconds. If it's not possible to get optimal, then often it'll use the whole 5 minutes to try to generate the best possible outcome. I'll skip straight to export student file, and I'll export this. This will just land in my downloads. I reckon some of you will be interested to see what that looks like. So I'll just really quickly jump in to my downloads, open the student file, go straight to the grid, and you'll see that it looks exactly as you'd expect to look. It's got all the students in these exams. We should also see here 10 bio, exam 1 and 2, they're on the same line. So they're on at the same time. Now, from here, it can be a little bit painful to get all the documents created that you need. And so that's where our helper apps will come in handy. So I'm going to change kind of mode here, if you like, and take you very quickly through these 3 helper apps. Actually, before I do, I'll just dive in and grab from here. So you'll notice that we downloaded the SFX before. You can also, under solution summary, download, if you press solution summary and press download solution, it downloads this CSV file for you, this exam CSV. That's important. You need that for these helper apps. Okay, now, the subject load calculator is going to tell you how many papers teachers have to mark on each day of the exam period. Firstly, it asks you to drop your TFX. It's asking you for your reference, your academic TFX here. So what's actually running each day at the moment. And so I'll double click that, and then it asks you for your exam solution CSV. We just downloaded this, and so I will link this here. I'll press next. It says, tell us which subjects have exams. Don't worry, the system knows already which subjects you ticked as having exams. But if you only care about year 11 marking, then you could just click year 11 here, for example. Next, it tells us the student count for each subject, and it wants you to put in a threshold. And so let's say you think it's unacceptable for someone to have more than 40 papers to mark on the last day of the exams, right? So I type in 40 here. I tick all teachers. I don't mind which teacher it is. I don't want anyone to have more than 40 papers. I generate the constraints. What this is doing is it's actually saying, if you want to go back to the exam solver and make sure that no one gets 40 papers, you just need to make sure that 9 Geo is not on the last day. Same with these. Down here, you'll see multiple subjects. You need to make sure that 9 English, 10 English, and 11 English don't all fall on the last day. Some of them, you'll know immediately they can't because English is early in the exam period. If it's year 10 or 11, you know it won't fall on the last 2 days anyway, because only the year 9s have exams on the last 2 days. Although I might have forgotten to tick the year 10s. We'll see what happens. Next, you can export those constraints as well. Next, calculate marking load. It tells you exactly how many papers each teacher gets on each day. And so if some of these, don't sit well with you, then you can go back and add them as constraints. So this guy here, Samuel White, who teaches, has 2 year 11 methods classes and a few more maths classes, gets 94 papers on day 4, but then has 4 days after that with no marking. So that's that app, and you can export that as a CSV as well. Next, if we go back to the hub, we have the exam timetable enrichment helper. This can take up to about 10 or 15 minutes. And so I'm not going to kind of bore you with clicking every button here. I'll kind of mash the keypad a little bit here, but it's very similar. It wants your academic timetable. It wants your exam solution. And you might have guessed, yes, we will roll all these into the one app eventually. Process the files. It wants you just to check that these are the right year levels for those exams. Let's assume they are. Now, what it wants you to do here is it wants you to tell the system the dates and times for each exam. And so you can do things like, firstly, sorry, I should have scrolled to the top. Firstly, you can tell it the first exam is on the 10th of June, 2026, and that is cycle day 4, for example, and then guess the remaining dates, and it will skip weekends. So here, the 10th of June must be a Wednesday because you can see it goes Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then it skips to Monday. If it's a Wednesday, it's probably not day 4, but you get the idea. Down here, you can type in the start time of, say, your session 1 exams, and you can say that the majority of them will be 15 minutes reading time and 90 minutes writing time. This applies to year 11 exams only on all days and only session 1. tick them all or press select all filtered, and then press apply to selected, and it will apply those times to these exams. Now I'm going to press generate timetables now. I'm skipping obviously some important stuff there, but if you do that, what you'll get here is the opportunity to download an enriched CSV, which is just the same as the original, but it has start times and end times. And I might very quickly open that. You can see it here. It looks like this. It thinks that every exam starts at 9 a.m. because that's what we told it, but you get the idea. It's got your start times and end times. I won't save that. You can download a Word document as well. And this is where it kind of gets pretty cool. I think the formatting looks like this. And so you basically have your entire exam timetable that's pretty close to being printable and something that you might load onto a link in your learning management system. It's done for you. So that's that. And you can generate a very similar Excel spreadsheet. For the sake of time, I'll let you experiment with that one. And the last one, you kind of has to resist on, so let's hope this works perfectly. You know that we got an exam SFX file before. So if you click this, and it's that one there, the reference TFX is your academic timetable file. So we go back up here, here it is. And you get a couple of options. Firstly, it says, what is the roll class code you would like to use for your exams? The default one. Do you want to apply a default exam teacher code in here? And then you've got two options. You can either create a standalone TFX here, or you can merge into an existing TFX. I think that if I only have time to show you one, I think merge is probably slightly more impressive in the sense that you know that if we can show you a merge timetable and it works, then creating a standalone one's trivial. If we press continue, you can see a count of the subjects, students, and the mode. Scroll down, it's got them all as roll class exam for here. Scroll down, you can see what it's going to add. Now, you've got two options. You can either actually allocate the slots in your timetable, or you can just download basically menu 7A with your curriculum details, and you can do the rest of it later. But if I press continuation, it wants a solution CSV. I can't remember whether it wants the enriched one or not, so let's find out. Let's try enriched first and see what happens. Yeah, it likes it. You do have to map them again, which is a bit annoying. You really shouldn't have to, but you get the idea. It's a one click anyway. Now, map sessions to periods. For session 1, we want it to be period 1 and 2, and I think you'll need to press control, to make it period 1 and 2. Session 2 of your exam timetable maps to periods 3 and 4. Session 3 maps to periods 5 and 6. And allocate and download has downloaded an exam TFX here. If we go to the timetable and we press open, go to our downloads, there it is. A few classes not loaded. We go to the exam roll class. There are all the classes. There's no room or teacher in them yet, but if we go to construct timetable and go to the exams, you can see what it's done here. It's actually allocated these here. It's allocated the slots into your timetable. It's basically, it's turned a CSV into a TFX down here. Okay, so that is basically it. I'll go back to our presentation, which I think we're going to find we've covered it entirely. The supporting tools, the marking load app, the enrichment helper, and the create exam TFX, they're all in your hub. You should all have a hub access. Please contact me if you don't. That is, sorry, I'm just going back to see you all to see if there are any hands raised at the moment. No, that's it.
Marty, can I ask a question? It's Kathy from Padua.
So Kathy, hi Kathy, hi.
Hi, with putting it into your timetable then, if we then publish that to our daily org, what effect does that have on daily org covering teachers? Like, let's say we've roomed and staffed the exam timetable through the TFX. Can the daily org then do daily changes to those and publish them across?
Yes, is the short answer. You know that there's no such thing as only a short answer with me, though.
No.
If you want it to cover general supervisors,
Yep.
then you'll need to have a record for each supervisor. And there might be some people who are using timetabling solutions TFX files more than me, and so don't absolutely take this as gospel, but I think it's still the case that if you want, sorry, I'll reload the last file. If you want 6 supervisors in the English exam, I'm pretty certain you'll still need to create 6 records of this. I've always avoided it, and the reason I have is because when I create exam rosters, you'll see next week that we have an auto roster generator as well, and my rosters never line up with bell times. I've got 5-minute overlaps and all kinds of things, but yeah, the medium length answer is I think you'll need one for each supervisor. But if you do have that and they're staffed, it's a timetable, so it'll work the same way as any other timetable.
Yeah. Okay.
So you'll be able to cover them in Daily Org.
Thank you.
My pleasure. We'll see if anyone else has any questions. If not, there you go. As I just said, then next week we are covering exam supervision. We have in my experience, generating exam rosters, if you have supervision slots that don't align with bell times, if you've got different categories, so people putting out the papers, starters, finishers, general supervision, whatever the case may be, and if you've got overlap, say a 5-minute overlap to ensure that the next supervisor arrives before the other one has to race off to class, then it can take, in a school with 1,200 students, it can take 15 to 20 hours to make your exam roster. This supervision module, it will take about 20 to 40 minutes to set up, but then when you press solve, it usually solves in under about 5 minutes. So if you are keen to see that, please, I urge you to come along next week. If you use external invigilators, or you like just the element of surprise, and what I mean by that is if someone calls in sick, you just allocate your exam supervisions via Daily Org. You probably don't need to turn up next week unless you're keen to see what this module looks like. So that's it from me. Please, as I said last week, thank you for turning up firstly, but if you want to ask questions and you don't want a huge audience for your questions, please feel free. I'll hang around for another however long I need to, 15 or 20 minutes. Otherwise, thanks again, and we'll see you back here next Thursday. Have a great afternoon.